What I've noticed is that the people who are stuck in careers that do not fit them, it actually doesn't have anything to do with them being lazy or them being unmotivated or them feeling like they didn't have a sense of direction when they were younger. And actually, everything to do with the roles that they were expected to play. And as we get older, we often forget where our decisions originally came from. And so once they understand where they got this sense of direction from, it kind of liberates them to realize, oh, this is how I ended up here, which means that I can choose something else for myself in a way that honors and centers my gifts and how I really thrive. Because in this video, I'm going to be sharing some of the most common reasons that people end up feeling stuck in careers that just do not align with who they are, and how you can start thinking about how to move towards something that feels just like you. Hey, I'm Kieran, coach and creator of The Possibility Pattern. And if you're in that weird in-between bit where you feel like what you're currently doing just isn't working, but you're not really sure what's coming next, then you're in the right place. I'm going to help you get unstuck, shift your energy, and create a version of success that's based off of your gifts, and to build a life around your strengths so that you can finally thrive doing what you do best. If you clicked on this video, then I'm going to guess that you've been feeling really off lately. Maybe you just haven't been feeling like yourself for the past few months. Maybe it's even been the past few years. Maybe it's been burnout. Maybe you've just been feeling really bored and unfulfilled. Maybe you've been questioning everything and trying to think about, how did I even end up here in the first place? And if I were to guess, it would probably be that you've built a life that looks really good on paper, but just doesn't feel like you anymore. Well, if this is how you've been feeling, then I want you to know that you are not alone by any means. So when we're kids, we are often told that you can be whatever you want to be when you grow up. But the reality is that that's not always true for most of us. Maybe no one actually explicitly said it outright to you, but for a lot of us, our parents and our caregivers and our extended family did influence the way that we saw ourselves. So let's get into it. And as we go through them, see which one resonates the most for you, and let me know in the comments below. So here's the first one that I see all the time. You picked the right path, but not your path. So if this is you, then this might have been something that was very explicit. So this is where you were told. And if you have African parents or Indian parents, or, you're the children of immigrants, you are going to recognize this. So this is where you're given the options: the doctor, the lawyer, the accountant, the engineer, and you don't really have much say in it. And so you follow this path because it feels like it's the only one. And obviously in some families, there's a spectrum. Like some people I've heard of where their parents, would say they would only support them through university, and pay for their degrees if it was in those specific subjects. And sometimes it's not as extreme as that, but it can still be a very clear expectation, and it's not really a choice. So if this is what you did and you picked one of these paths, then you may be feeling like you did everything right. So you became the lawyer, you became the doctor, you became the accountant, and you have become successful doing that thing. So you may probably have reached a level of success that you feel like, you know what, you have made your family proud. And maybe you were the one that the aunties use as the example at the family function to say to your younger cousins, hey, listen, this is the person that you should be looking up to. So by all accounts, you've succeeded. But the truth is, you hate it here. And that's because it was never to do with you in the first place. And so it's completely normal to be feeling trapped in something that you never really had the opportunity to question and decide for yourself. But at the same time, because it's all you've ever known, it can be really difficult and daunting to start asking yourself these questions. And if this is you, then you might be asking yourself things like, I've worked so hard to build this life. How can I not want it? Or what do I even do if I don't want it? Or is it too late to want something different? And how can I do something different without having to completely start from scratch? So that's the first way that this can show up, or how you ended up in a career that you had no business being in. But if you've been listening and you feel like, can't relate, then wait a minute, because this next one might be you. Okay, so number 2 is you picked approval over alignment. So if you listen to the first one and you felt like, well, no one really forced me to do anything or pushed me to do anything. I chose, I did have options. I could, for the most part, do what I want. It was up to me, right? And that might be true, right? Well, the thing to know is that not all influence looks like pressure. Sometimes it looks like praise. And this is more about reinforcement, a sort of subtle shaping of your identity based on like how you were when you were younger, or based on what made other people happy or proud or impressed. For example, I had a client who was a lawyer. And when we were sort of doing this work of unpacking and tracing back how she ended up being a lawyer because she was deeply unhappy, one of the things that she said to me that's really stood out was, you know what, when I was a little girl, I was really talkative. And so everybody in my family would just say, she's going to be a lawyer one day. Like, she's going to be a lawyer. She would make a great lawyer. And so she became one. And it wasn't necessarily like a conscious choice of, I'm going to become a lawyer to impress or make my family proud. But subconsciously, she was living up to these expectations that had been created since she was a kid. So she built her whole work identity around that early validation without ever really questioning whether or not the reality of that type of career would suit her. And once she became a lawyer, she realized actually she was spending most of her time alone, head down, reading reports. And she is talkative. She does love connecting with people. And so she actually doesn't even get to spend a lot of her time doing that as a lawyer. And the interesting thing is that when she went back and told her mom, like, hey, I'm actually thinking about leaving law, her mom said, but you've always wanted to be a lawyer, which is the thing about approval, is that if you have been chasing it for long enough, it can start to feel like authenticity. It can start to feel subconsciously like this is the thing that you want. And it's only when you do that work and reflection to really understand what's underneath that, that you start to realize, oh, it's not that I wanted to be a lawyer, it's that I wanted the approval of my family. And this can also work in the reverse, right? So I had another client who had been working in finance for her whole career. But when we were really understanding her strengths, it became clear that she actually, the things she was best at, aligned more with marketing. And so when I asked her, why did you never go into marketing when you left university? She told me that she had the opportunity to. She could have essentially picked that path. And the reason why she didn't was because there was a perception at that time that there was a certain type of girl, certain type of woman who did marketing and sort of communications, that sort of world. And the translation in her family was sort of that it wasn't respectable, it wasn't successful enough, it wasn't good enough in some way. And she didn't want to be that type of person. So even though nobody told her not to go into marketing, she knew that if she pursued that path, she would get disapproval from her family as being one of those types of girls. And so in order for her to not get disapproval, she went into finance. The important idea here is that sometimes we don't pick the path that is best for us. We pick the path that we think is safest for us. So it's the path that's not going to raise any eyebrows and that people are going to be, sort of happy to hear about. It kind of gives you that extended feeling of like you've made your family proud. And the issue with this one is that it's not that conscious. And so it's subconsciously the path that is safest for you. This one might be you if you've been finding yourself asking, if I'm actually pretty good at this, why do I just find it so draining? Or why do I hate this so much if this is what I've always wanted? So that's number two. And if you're still not feeling called out yet, then cool, because wait until we start talking about the next one. Especially if you're an eldest daughter, this one's for you. So number three, you picked what everybody needed you to be, not who you are. Of the three, this is the one that I think is the hardest to see because it is the most subconscious. It's really not about the job that you picked, but about the role that you played in your family and how that extends to the way that you probably organize your entire life. If you are the eldest daughter or you're the responsible one, the fixer in your family, then you probably are going to relate to this immediately because you were likely the one that was holding everything together. You were the one who was looking out for everybody else and making sure that you were helping your family. And so when it came to thinking about your career, you maybe were not thinking about, what am I best at and what really lights me up? You were thinking about what's going to best help everybody else and what's going to help me take care of everyone. So for example, I've had clients who have grown up in single parent families or in families where they've had to mature early for various reasons. And so when they were choosing their career, passion or interest was low down on the list. What they were thinking about was what has the highest earning potential? How can I make sure that I'm making as much money so that I'm able to support the rest of my siblings? I can help support my mother, to look after everybody else in the family. And how will this allow me to best contribute? So whether that's sending money home to extended family or just being able to be a safety net for the family or being the one that the family is investing in, right? So maybe you are the person who your family is riding on your success to be able to continue their success, which there's no judgment on that. That was the reality of the time. And you coped and your family coped in the ways that they could. I'm saying this to say that if you are now waking up and feeling like, I've organized my life around being able to be responsible for so many other people, it's completely normal that at some point that you would start feeling like, hey, what about me? and feeling completely disconnected from what it is that you want, because everything that you've been choosing has been for everybody else. So this might be you if you've been finding yourself asking questions like, I've been making all of my decisions for everybody else, but who am I outside of that? And what is it that I want outside of that? And that question is such a powerful beginning of returning to yourself. So while this is not a definitive list in terms of all the reasons why you might have chosen a career that is not aligned for you, but I think an underrated pattern that people don't consider as often and that I see come up all the time with clients, and people are really surprised actually about the influence that their upbringing and their culture and their families had on the decisions that they are still living out today. And I think that's the thing. When you're 5, 10, 15, 20 years into a career, it can be so easy to forget how you even ended up there in the first place, and starting to realize that, oh, these are some of the dynamics that were at play at that point. Recognizing that can be really releasing, because something that often happens as well is that now that you are, so many years down the line, our parents and our families and, who we are surrounded by has also probably changed. The dynamics have changed. So for example, you may be at a point now where if you did say to your parents, that you want to do something completely different, they're like, you're a grown person, do what you want. Whereas back then, when you were, 18 or in your early 20s and you're making these decisions, it can feel so much higher stakes. So all of that to say that I think it's worth considering. If you're feeling stuck, I think it's worth considering how some of those dynamics played a role in you choosing what it is that you're living out today, and create an opening for you to decide differently. And so if any of these three that we've discussed today have hit a little bit too close to home, I hope what they show you is that you are not broken, and that you are not lazy, or you are not directionless, or you are not confused, and you're not behind. You're just reaching the part of your story where the version of success that you were handed when you were younger has started feeling a little bit too tight and a little bit too restrictive. And that's actually not failure. The way that you are feeling is not a sign that you are failing at what you're doing. It's actually a sign of growth, because somewhere inside you, there is a deeper truth of who you really are and of how you are really supposed to be showing up in the world, that is trying to come through, and is also starting to realize that it can come through. Maybe now more than ever in your life, it is more possible for that side of you to be expressed, whereas in the past that wasn't an option for all of these different reasons. And it's a sign that maybe it's time for you to start building a life around something more than responsibility and more than approval, and is not just about, what is the logical safest path. And actually, that's more about you and more about the life that you really want to live, which is the whole point of possibility. It's not about feeling like you have to have everything figured out up front. And so if you feel like, I just don't even know what that would be yet, if it's not this, what would it be? The whole point of possibility is finally giving yourself the permission to ask, what would my life look like if I chose for myself? And if you have no idea what that looks like, then I've made something to help you figure out what is the next best aligned move that you can make. So check out the link in my description for the quiz. You can also see it right here. It's called Clarify Your Next Aligned Move, and it's going to help you get clearer about where you are right now. What is it that's making you feel stuck, and what you can do next that's going to help bring you back to yourself. So you don't have to have it all figured out. All you need to know is what is your next best step that you can take in the direction of a life that feels like yours. Okay, so let me know in the comments which one hit the closest for you, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.